Hello and welcome to this week's video. Just a reminder, the context of these videos, our classes are 3 hours long each week, and we only meet for a little over an hour of those classes. These videos make up for that classroom time that we're missing. So this is important that you watch these, obviously, for your course and for your grade, because the questions are part of your participation. And you have a lot more flexibility this way. So just keep that in mind. I just wanted to reiterate something I always talk about in class on these videos. I'm in quarantine here. Anyway, so today's video is about keyword searches and how to use them and so forth. And what I mean by keyword searches, and we talked about this already in class, which is when you use keywords to plan out or plan out your speech, like in the brainstorming, or using keywords in your note cards for your speech. These are words that help you build your speech from like the outline and so forth, and from brainstorming. Well, it's the same thing with your searches. That's what it is. So keeping in mind, the reason why I teach it this way is because I want you to be able to do this outside of this class. When I taught computer usage in the public, the reason why that curriculum worked so well is because I wasn't teaching the program. I was teaching how to always use any program, like when it came to Microsoft Word and those things. So keep that in mind. This is. Excuse me for 1 second. I need a coaster. So keep that in mind. This is what the purpose is. So I'm trying to entice you to keep watching. Now, before we start the actual video, I have to confess something. So as I stated at the beginning of the semester with my background, when I am not in the colleges, if I have days off during the week, I like to substitute teach, not just because it helps with the income stuff, but also I truly do like doing outreach to public schools. It helps me as an instructor in the colleges, but also I always think about when I went to high school, my friends who went to high school, and I just think, you know, how would they have been better served with teachers and so forth. And so I learn a lot, and I try to do a lot out there. But I do have to confess one thing. I can be the bad guy on the campus. In fact, I was been sent purposely to be the bad guy in certain campuses. In LA Unified, um, I wasn't purposely sent to schools, but I've been to some of the toughest schools at LA Unified. Um, in Fresno Unified, where I started that endeavor, I was purposely sent to some of the worst classrooms, worst schools in that school district. And do I have stories from these school districts? And as for Alhambra Unified School District, um, unfortunately, some students found out the wrong, they found out the worst way that I was a teacher not to mess with. But the reason why I tell you that is the reason why I was that teacher and I was successful at it is because when we work at these problem schools and we want to identify students who need help, who need to be pushed into the right direction, either be an alternative education or just identified for disciplinary issues or so forth, or parent counseling, or in some cases CPS situations. Um, I was the person who's really good at writing those reports. I was the person who was and is one of the best report writers there is. And the reason why I was so good at it, and I am so good at it, I always say in the past tense, even though I still do it. It's because of the pandemic. Um, but the reason why is because I knew exactly what to say. Not necessarily in the sense of, oh, I know how to say the right words to get people in trouble. No, it's not that. It's to be precise and efficient and effective in the words I choose in those reports. Most of the time, when teachers have to write up something, they talk about feelings, they go off tangents and so forth. But the way I did things is identified the stuff that was actually relevant and is important to the development of the issue, the student, whatever was going on in that situation. The right words is what separates people from making the wrong impression or going in the wrong direction and doing the right thing, going in the right direction and finding the right stuff. And so keep that in mind. I give that personal example because when you do research, when you go out there, the words you choose is very important. A lot of time, people when they go on the internet, they want to just type in sentences and stuff like that, or they just jump on the first information that comes forward. So by going over this stuff in a basic way, in a basic manner, hopefully it gets you into that right direction. All right. To do this every time you have to look up stuff. And by the way, this research stuff I'm talking about is not just for college, it's not for school, it's looking up job opportunities. It is looking up the best places to visit when you're visiting a new town or looking up the best food options. I mean, it's a lot of just basics. So let's get into the basics. All right. Um, so stop share. What just happened? All right, let's try this again. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. I don't know what happened just there. This is where we're gonna start, and we're actually gonna start with me. If you Google me, by the way, don't Google me. But if you do, you're gonna find a lot of women. You're gonna find a whole lot of women. There's an actress. There's several teachers. There's lots of female Leslies out there. I'm actually pretty hard to find, and some of that's on purpose. But I start with me because um, and by the way, I'm doing the image search not to show you the women, but because if I actually did the all, because I use this computer all the time, it naturally just goes to my like Twitter and stuff like that. So I can't use all Google search when looking at me on my computer. I would have to do this at a different location with a computer that I don't use and without me signed into my profile. So, anyways, but a normal search, if I was doing a search for me on a public library, you would get a bunch of women. The person who owns LeslieHyatt.com is I believe, a professor who's very proud of her PhD. And then you have the actress, and then you have a bunch of other teachers and so forth. But to find me, and I'm not asking you to do this, but to find me, you would have to add more to it in the Google searches. Professor, uh, I'm this semester I'm at ELAC or LA, Los Angeles Community College District. I've already disclosed I've worked with a couple other schools like Cal State LA, stuff like that. And of course, you guys know where I'm from, which is Fresno. And so that's a lot of those keywords. So let me give you an example where we can actually do the searches. When we're searching for a person, here I had just a generic name, John Smith. And John Smith is a famous explorer, soldier, and so forth. He's British, and he did this stuff during the late 1500s, 1600s. So he probably is responsible for a lot of death. Oh, the establishment in Jamestown, Virginia. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, people died. All right, anyways, the reason why I bring it up, because if you just generally look at John Smith, you're going to find this person. And if you're looking up John Smith, and let's say he's a local official, you would just add a couple words to kind of narrow down the searches. So I put in Los Angeles, California. By the way, I didn't and maybe I should have, but I didn't think about doing this search ahead of time. And you narrow it down to this, to the John Smith in these areas. And you notice, hey, there's a John Smith in the area that's a cardiovascular disease doctor in Los Gatos. If I went ahead and did, let's see, Boston, Don't worry, I'm not gonna do a Boston accent. Park the car. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. You get there's a famous John Smith in Boston. There you go. So you can see how by adding these things. So if you wanted to narrow down the search, let's go to another big city, Houston, Texas. John Smith in Houston, Texas. There's a doctor. But let's say you're not looking up the doctor, then you would add another thing. Let's say you're looking up, maybe there's a John Smith who's an accountant. And sure enough, there is a John Smith CPA. Do you see how adding those words can narrow down the searches for finding individuals, finding people? I'm not telling you how to stalk people, but it's important to know this stuff because the same thing goes for your topics. If you're doing a topic on how to, probably not the best idea to have this person's personal data. Let's go back to the Explorer. If we go into that route and you were looking up certain information. So for example, this John Smith that we have in front of us here in Jamestown, Virginia. He's not originally from Jamestown, Virginia. He's from England. So if you wanted to do a little bit more research on this individual, John Smith, and you wanted to know about his time in England, you would put John Smith, England, and maybe find out what years he was, and then you add those years or so forth. The same thing when he was in Jamestown, you would put John Smith, Jamestown, and maybe the year he was in Jamestown, stuff like that. By doing these things, by adding these words on top of it. So, for example, we always look at celebrities when we have fun in our discussions and so forth. If I wanted to look up one celebrity I always point out, and I bring him up because I was watching his comedy today, is Gabriel Iglesias. If I was doing an informative on his career, you would put Gabriel Iglesias, and then you might add when you were looking for his career. So maybe where he was starting out, maybe where he's from, or maybe what he does recently and so forth. Where did he make his name? Now, FYI, if you go to the Ice House Comedy Club in Pasadena, California, you'll actually see Gabriel Iglesias' picture and how many times he'd been on there, because it's one of the places he visited a lot when he was starting out. So this is how this works. This is how those initial starts, you put in the keywords, and you just forget about looking up people. Just think about looking up issues. If you were looking up, the classic example I always look up is driving in Los Angeles. We all have our problems driving in Los Angeles. It gets, and there's an example I'll use at the end. There's so many issues on driving in Los Angeles. Are you looking up being pulled over? Are you looking up congestion? Are you looking up so many different things? You have to add those keywords. So we go into the next part, finding data. And we go into my hometown of Fresno, California. Now, just real quick, I just want to show you something. Fresno, California. But guess what? There is a Fresno, Texas. It's not that big. It's just a little place. Oh, it does have a population. But there's a Fresno, Texas. And there is a Fresno, Ohio. That one surprised me. There's only 282 people. So you can see here by just adding a couple keywords, you find things. But let's go back to my hometown. Fresno, California. Here's the thing about Fresno. It's poor. It's the poorest major city in California. It is actually, just FYI, one of the best test markets in the United States. If you wanted to test a product or something, you should test it in Fresno. The Doritos Tacos was tested and approved by sales here for Taco Bell in Fresno, California. And also, Fresh and Easy. There was a Fresh and Easy, I guess, in Alhambra. They tried it in Fresno. That Fresno was a test market, and it failed in Fresno. But they thought they were better than what that showed, and they still tried it in the United States, and it did not work. All right. So, but when if you're looking up information for Fresno, you want to add stuff and you want to look up data because obviously most of the time Google searches are not the best. Wait, let's take an issue. If we take an issue and then we add a couple keywords. So if I was doing an issue on teen pregnancy in Fresno, California. By the way, I always misspell. So if I misspell, yeah. And sure enough, you find some interesting data. But the most important thing about doing this kind of keyword search is you can scroll down here and you can find maybe government agencies that you can start looking into for your data. You can, if it's a legitimate government agency, you can use that as a citation because their data is citable. So if you were doing the same thing here for Los Angeles and you were talking the issues, um, it might be impressive for your speakers if you put like Los Angeles and if you were doing the teenage pregnancy and so forth. It is a, excuse me one second. All right. Sorry, I just had to remember what I did there. It is a great way by adding those keywords and narrowing down the searches. You can not only find information on the subject, but you can also find where you can get data that is citable. All right. Um, you can keep looking for all these different things and actually has information for surrounding areas. And the same thing for a lot of stuff. I did this search earlier, California County teenage pregnancy, where I added some information, and I got a lot of information on. There's these ads. I don't ever go to. I don't ever use ads for the most part, but you can get into some basic data stuff and so forth. So if you were doing a report on teenage pregnancy, and you add a couple things, you wanted to know what area is the most likely to have high teenage pregnancy rate. By the way, it's where I'm from in the Central Valley, in the mountain communities, in the East Sierra areas. When it's poor and you have nothing to do, that happens. But you find out that information by looking this information up. All right, by using those keywords, and it gets you started. If we go back to Fresno, you would find a lot of stuff by just again adding those keywords, and that points you into the right direction. We'll do a fun one real quick because in Fresno we're proud of our tacos. Fresno, our AAA baseball team, they call themselves the Fresno Tacos on Tuesdays. We think we have the best tacos in the United States. In Fresno, which I agree with, but Fresno tacos, and you'll get a lot of ads and so forth. Home of Fresno Tacos, the baseball team. Oh, by the way, I want these jerseys. But you get there, but you add a couple other words like, I don't know, best. And sure enough, you'll get lists and so forth, and push it. And the best tacos, the source right there, Fresno B. And by the way, these eventually lead into the best taco truck showdown and the best taco place, which was my taco place I lived right next to. So, anyways, you see how this works. We add the words, and we can narrow down our searches and find things. Then we can add words to other things and to find data. So we can find references and so forth, but we can just find data to help cipher through and figure out what we want to talk about and so forth. That's what these kind of keyword searches do. You can use it again to find subjects that you want to talk about, and then you can also find it to filter out the data that you probably want to quote. The teenage pregnancy rates, California. I use county because I was looking up the county with the highest rate. It's usually Mariposa County, a mountain community off the Central Valley. But you can see here what kind of data they use and quote. And by doing that, you can see what data that you want to quote. By the way, by doing these searches and so forth, for your persuasion, you can look at solutions that you might want to quote for your solution section. All right, these a lot of these places have ideas on how to fix these issues. But let's go into our last search and the last thing about keyword searches, and that is the best place to do searches for any of your papers and speeches, which is the library search. Now, this one, by the way, is a public library because, again, my access is not complete for the ELAC. So, and I use the Alhambra Public Library because I need to update my other one, which has a better search engine. But still, this still works. And so we look up a word, that a subject that is banned for your informative and your persuasion, cartels. And by searching just the word cartels, I have over 58,000 different subjects. That's a lot. And as you can see here, lots of information. The best sources, by the way, for academic things is journals. So let's narrow it down to journals. Right? 1882 for publication. That's crazy. All right, so we have 2,445 different journals. All right. Now, when we add information on this, and we were doing the same thing we were doing in the Google search, but we're finding legit journals and information. Cartels in the time of COVID-19. See, and it's updated regularly, and academic journals. But we can look up different things. Like if we were going to do a more historic look, we'll look up Columbia. Columbus. Columbia. And then we do the search there. And as you can see here, it narrows it down to 409. And these articles right here would have more focus on Colombia. And I showed you in the previous video, I can come up here and put not in there, and I can maybe exclude ones that focus on Mexico and so forth. But let's go back and we can go into the Mexico now, more updated issue on cartels. Do the search. My computer is slow. And sure enough, we can find journals that cover, and it's 90. Oh, wait. Oh, they gave me more than just journals. All right. Well, we get 97 journals on cartels in Mexico. And the reason why we want to do these kinds of things like this, if we want to use those keywords, is it eliminates a lot of stuff we don't need. So if I was doing a speech on Mexican cartels, by putting that one extra word in cartel, we can do that. Now, if I was interested in cartels, Mexico, and maybe stuff that's happening in the Donald Trump administration, then you can actually add another word. And in this case, you should only add the word Trump. See how it gives you a bunch of items? Personally, I don't like using all those words. So Trump administration, cartel, Mexico, Trump. Let's see if I get anything. They gave me more than just that, but there are journals and so forth. So I narrowed down the search with cartel, Mexico, and Trump. And by the way, the reason why I didn't do Trump administration or just like Mexico, and I wanted to look at a certain area and so forth, it gives me more flexibility to look around and see what is available and so forth. And so it gives me the availability to maybe, if I was talking about Mexico cartels and the Trump administration, by not putting the Trump administration and just putting Trump, it gives me the ability to maybe just find a quote from Donald Trump about Mexican cartels. And so when you add words into it, you narrow down the search so much that when you want to add a lot of words, that's when you want a specific example. All right. That's when you want to just narrow down everything and to get that first example. But by having just these three little generic keywords, you end up having a lot more flexibility to find stuff. And this is really good if you are lost and you're trying to figure out what to say, because your research leads you into a direction that is agreeable for the speech pattern or what you're trying to do in your paper. Okay, so these are just ways to do that. Before I get into the discussion, this is a little tip I saved for students who actually watch these videos. I should be doing this a lot more often because I know students are going right to the questions in the discussion thread and not watching the videos. So this is a tip for students who actually watch the videos about college. You see what I'm doing there? When you turn in your outlines, your rough drafts for your papers or your speeches or even outlines with me, just even if you don't use the sources that you're not comfortable with the sources you found or the references you have, you might look for other stuff. Just turn it in to make sure you turn your papers in on time. You can always go back, unless you have a professor who's an absolute, well, I don't want to say the word. There's in academia, there's some flexibility that we know you change your minds. So make sure, if you don't know exactly what you do, a lot of students, they feel so much pressure up here. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And so because I don't know what to do, I don't know what to research, do these simple keyword searches. Find that article, and you might find something that you might not use, but at least you have that citation for the rough draft, and you can come back to it and use it if you need to, or you can say, okay, well, at least I turned something in. Because a lot of times students, when they're writing papers or outlines and stuff to turn in, if they're not set in stone yet on certain things, they think they can't do any of it. When in reality, especially when it comes to rough drafts, your professors know that you are okay with making changes and so forth. All right? Don't stress. What you're going to do for your discussion participation is a pretty simple one. You have to do two sources. And by the way, you can do this video and discussion anytime you want, including during your persuasion. When we're on persuasion speeches, any one of your informative, your persuasion, whatever it is, I want you to write some keywords for a search. And then I want you to then point and show a source that you found through a citation you found using that. And so you can actually take the citation you're using for your paper and just put it in the discussion thread. And just as long as you have keywords showing how you found that. All right. So use some keywords, and then there will be an example in the discussion thread, and then show a citation that you found from the keyword. All right. So keep that in mind. All right. So that's this week's thing. Let's get out of the stop share. If you have any questions on research and how to get through it quickly and I'm a resource on that. All right. Contact me and we go through Google Voice or during office hours. All right. Have a good day and get this stuff done so you don't wait till the last minute.